This is Adam Gorney with the Respect My Decision podcast this week with a special guest from auburnsports.com, Bryan Matthews, who's definitely involved in a very interesting coaching situation and season. And guys are coming off the board left and right here. And I mean that 5 Power 5 jobs already open mid-season. It seems like that's the new trend, is to just, if you're going to do it at the end of the season, just do it now. Bryan, where do you kind of see it sitting right now? What in town? What's kind of the feeling on his job status, security or insecurity heading into this week?
I think the feeling is one more big loss, and that's probably the end for him. And that is probably or could come this weekend at Georgia. You know, the number 2 team in the country. You look at how they played against Missouri. You listen to Kirby afterwards. He was pretty upset about the way they played. So not only are they coming again into that game at home against their biggest rival, but they've also got something to prove too. So that could be a difficult matchup for Auburn.
Let's start from the beginning here, because it never seemed like, and I don't want to say he wasn't welcomed into town, but it certainly wasn't a long, hearty thank you for coming here.
Right.
How did that kind of all transpire, and why so early did this become sort of a bitter relationship?
I guess it kind of started his first season. You know, they lost 5 consecutive games to end it.
Yeah.
He had a lot of disruption in his coaching staff. You know, he let Gordon Williams go early on and replaced him with one of his guys. You know, that sent up some red flags. He had a lot of turnover on that coaching staff. I think 5 or 6 full-time assistants have come and gone since he was hired. And then recruiting.
Yeah.
Auburn finished last season 71st in the country in recruiting. Now, they did a great job over the last month or so to go from 71st to up into the top 20. A lot of that was Zach Etheridge. A lot of that was getting great players in the secondary, like J.D. Rim and Osbury from over in Louisiana. And I think LSU's problems, definitely helped Auburn there. But then you go to the late signing period. Auburn goes 0 for 6 on the top guys there and doesn't sign anybody.
Yeah.
Then you flip over to January. They hold their first supposedly big junior date. It was just a total disaster. They only got I think it was 10 or 12 kids there, and not a bunch of high profile guys. And then you go to February in the investigation, and it was a university led investigation. But I think it's been looked upon from the outside and framed as sort of like Auburn's boosters on a witch hunt trying to get rid of him. And I think at some point in time that was a part of it in certain circles, not all of them, but some of them. But also, I think, and lost in all that is that there was an allegation made against him, and that was investigated. So I think all that really led up to him being on the hottest of hot seats just going into this year.
Yeah. And that's the interesting part before we talk about the investigation slash coup, however you want to sort of describe it.
Right.
Is you hire a coach to kind of run the program the way he wants to do it, put his own mark on it. And I understand there were certainly hiccups there, but this isn't the guy that, was a failure other places. I mean, there have been schools that have hired guys with losing records to come in and try to turn things around. He had 5 10-win seasons at Boise State, and I understand that it's Boise State, but how did it seemed like Auburn hired him to come in and run things the way Auburn wanted it to be done instead of the way he wanted it to be done. And I understand there were some mistakes along the way. Do you think that's fair to say, or do you think that's completely unfair and he's sort of not been what they expected?
I think it's fair on both sides because, I think he definitely is a coach that has his way of doing things. And certainly recruiting against Kirby Smart and Nick Saban are not what he's a part of. That's just not him.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Auburn needs. But the other thing I think that really hurt him among the Auburn faithful is he just did not connect, right? I could watch him at basketball games. He would show up, get his picture taken, get a video taken, and leave.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one noticing that, right? I mean, that's obvious to people what's going on.
Yeah.
He never really, him and his family never really meshed themselves in the community, and I just don't think he ever garnered support. I've never seen a head coach at Auburn with this less support at this point in his tenure. There's nobody in his corner. Of course, the guy that hired him, Alan Green, was let go or let his contract expire, however you want to look at it, a couple of weeks before the season started. So that was really the last guy in his corner, and now he's just sort of a dead man walking.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the investigation, like you said, university led. Certainly, if I'm Bryan Harsin, I'm not thrilled that that's going on.
Right. Well, he's
Um,
on vacation, by the way.
right. Sort
Yeah.
of, he's out of town. Let's get rid of him and keep him away. And I remember, I think he was out of the country, if
He
I
was.
remember correctly.
He was. He's down at the
Um,
beach. I think he's in Mexico somewhere.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
can you blame him from his side, saying, kind of screw this. If they don't want me here, then I don't need to be here.
No, I do not blame him, and I think
Yeah,
that's kind of the attitude he's had since then in many ways. I'm not saying that's a fact, but I'm just saying that you get that sort of feeling, right? No, I just think he is a man that believes in his way of doing things. I think he's very, very self-centered in that respect. And that was definitely assault. He felt like that was assault on himself. The way he, the way he wants to run a football program and on his family, because a lot of the allegations also include a bunch of rumors about a staff member that
yeah.
I don't believe were ever true. So I think that made it even worse as far as the way he viewed it.
Talk about being ingratiated into that community, SEC community especially. I think that's important. It's important everywhere, but especially in the South, and especially when Bruce Pearl is, taking his shirt off and pounding his chest and doing all the fun stuff, and
Yeah.
and maybe Brian Hart's just not that guy, but you almost have to politic that way, right? To be beloved by the community.
I think you do. And I think Auburn's had some coaches that can do that and some that don't. And the ones that don't last as long as maybe they should based on their record. Tuberville was one of those guys.
Yeah.
And he had a couple of, he had 2 or 3 times during his tenure here. 2003, of course, stands out the most. Auburn's administration at the time got caught on a plane, in Louisville. I think it was Louisville, talking to another coach to come replace him the week before the Iron Bowl, right? That's how close he got. But he was a politician at heart, and he had a ton of support among the fan base, and people, lost their freaking minds when they found out about that, right? And the AD ended up getting fired, and Tuberville gets the contract. They beat Bama, and that Iron Bowl. Cardell, the first play of the game, if you'll remember, has an 80-yard touchdown
Yeah.
run. And then the next year they win the SEC championship and were undefeated and probably should have had a chance to play for the national championship. So that's what a coach that garners support and is dialed in the community. That's what he can do at Auburn, right? Even if the bigwigs don't like him.
Yeah.
But Harsin has been unable to do that at all.
Yeah. Is there a little bit at Auburn, and you would know this far better than I would, being there, that Auburn can't get out of its own way? Like, like the, they didn't have to hire Bryan Harsin if they knew he wasn't going to be sort of an affable guy that was
Right.
friendly in the community. They didn't have to do this. And the Malzahn stuff that we can go over, and the Chiswick stuff or whatever else. Is there some of that going on here too? Maybe.
I would not say there's a little bit of Auburn can't get out of its own way. I think there's a lot, and
Okay.
it's especially true in the football program, right? Because even with the dysfunction at Auburn, you hire a guy like Bruce Pearl, and the basketball program is better than it's ever been.
Yeah.
You hire a guy like Butch Thompson in baseball, which I know is not, not a national thing, but Auburn's been to 2 College World Series, right? I mean, it's as good as it's been basically for the most part. So you get the right guy in place, and that all changes, right? And yeah, there was a ton of dysfunction. The whole coaching search, going back to it, you had different factions of the BOT going after different guys. Some of the major guys wanted to install Kevin Steele and Rodney Garner
Yeah.
to replace Gus Malzahn. That information got out. There was a pushback on that. They panicked. Alan Greed said, "The hell with this! I'm going to go get this guy that I met at a pool party at a convention somewhere." Which is basically the first time he met him in a pool. So that's how it went down. And in the end, it didn't work out for Auburn because Bryan Harsin is just unable to recruit the way Auburn needs to recruit. In my opinion, I've been covering this school for 22 years. This program is worse off 2 years later after he was hired, as far as personnel, as far as the stability of the program, all that. The new guy has even a bigger job than Bryan Harsin did when he was hired.
Yeah, I've been in a lot of pools with a lot of guys talking and stuff, but I'm not going to hire them for anything.
Exactly.
I don't want to be around them 10 minutes later. And let's talk recruiting, and that's kind of the important part here. Is coaches love to think that they're the genius play callers and stuff, but if you don't have
Mm.
the fastest guys and the
Yep.
length off the edge and all those kinds of things, and the guys that are going to hit and the
Yep.
guys that are going to play through injuries and stuff, you're not going to win, especially in the SEC. And even if we're talking post Harsin here, it's not really set up well. I mean, they didn't recruit well last year. They're 12th in the conference this year, the fewest commits among any team in the conference. Does this mean portal? Does this mean JUCO for if there's a new guy coming in, or can there be a hire? Like we've talked about some names, maybe Hugh Freeze, maybe Jeff Grimes. There are definitely some names that have been thrown out there in terms of ideas that can kind of spark something. And we all know that it's going to be tough to recruit in state against Alabama as well.
Yeah, and I'll throw out some numbers for you that just are incredible. You mentioned some of them, but 51st in the country in recruiting right now. They brought in 27 official visitors, freshmen. They brought in some transfers too, but 27 high school, not freshmen, excuse me, high school juniors going to be seniors.
Yep.
2023 prospects, let's put it that way. And for official visits in May and June, they got a commitment from one of them, one of 27. To me, that's just, I can't believe that actually happened, right? I sat here and watched it happen. I interviewed a lot of those guys. I covered that process, and it was just a total whiff, right? And then you look at the state of Alabama, which is arguably as good as it's been in this 23 class. Auburn's got 3 of the top 30.
Yeah.
That's unacceptable, right? Auburn is used to, at the very best, splitting the state with Alabama, right?
Sure.
In their best years, they might get 10 or 12 of the top guys. But what's happening now, what's killing them is Clemson, Georgia, LSU, Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky. All these schools are coming into the state and beating Auburn for prospects,
Yeah.
right? Or what'll happen is Auburn's got these top guys they think they're going to get, right, and they have no chance of getting. They miss on them. It's too late for these other guys that are committed to Kentucky, Arkansas, whatever, and then they try to go back on them, and they're still like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So Auburn is in a really tough position recruiting wise right now. But and you talked about, I think, a little bit about the new guy gets that sort of hey, come on over, we got a brand new program, right? That never happened for Harsin. I do think with the right hire, it could happen again. That could be a help. And I do think Auburn's going to have to hit up junior college, have to hit up the portal as hard as possible, which is tough because you bring a new staff in right away. It's hard to make the portal priority, and if you don't offer a top kid that day, you're out of it in many ways with the portal thing. So that's going to be interesting to watch to see how Auburn can work that. The other thing is the time frame. Auburn has an interim AD right now, Rich McGlynn. I think he is going to make the decision on when to terminate Bryan Harsin's contract. I think then they're going to hire a new AD. The leading candidate is John Hartwell from Utah State.
Mm-hmm.
He has connections to Auburn, grew up in an Auburn family, was an AD at Troy, which is just down the road from Auburn. And then that's when the coaching search is really taking place. Now, that's not to say that Auburn's boosters, who are known to be involved in things, aren't already out there, talking and doing things. I think that's fairly normal to other schools too, but Auburn is certainly in the spotlight there. But you mentioned Hugh Freeze and Jeff Grimes. I think they're going to be 2 of the top candidates there. You at Ole Miss proved that he could compete for top 5-star type prospects. I know he got in trouble for that, right? But that era is over, right? We're in a new era where you can do that legally in many respects. So at least he's a guy like Harsin who understands the importance of going after these top guys and winning recruiting battles for these top guys. And he did it at Ole Miss. That tells me a lot. I don't care how much he had to do underhanded about it. And then Jeff Grimes, a guy who won a national championship at Auburn as offensive line coach. I have to go back and look, but I know when I write about it, I know I'm going to go back and look. But he signed a great offensive line class. I don't remember if it was 2009 or exactly when it was, but it was one of the best Auburn's had in the last decade or so. And then, of course, he's been a offensive coordinator at 2 Power 5 schools and been successful. So those are a couple of guys, I think, but I would not be surprised to see it expand much farther than that as we move forward.
Last question, and this is prediction time. Does Bryan Harsin make it to Lane Kiffin handshake pregame in 2 weeks, or is Georgia just going to smash them and they're just going to have enough?
My prediction is it ends this Sunday, but I think JG, as a matter of fact, JG Tate, our publisher, believes that it'll go into the Ole Miss game because the next week is an off week, so it makes sense to do it then. My take on that is, okay, let's say they get blown out by Georgia. What if they then go to Ole Miss and pull an upset, right? Then you're stuck with right? You can't do it after you beat a top 10 team on the road, can you? So, right. I mean, I know that's probably not likely the way Auburn's playing right now, but so we'll see. I think it'll be interesting to watch what happens this Saturday, and then if they do indeed lose or lose by a large margin, what happens on Sunday.
All right, Bryan, that's it. Bryan Matthews from auburnsports.com. This is Adam Gorney for the Respect My Decision podcast.
Appreciate it.